Welcome to I Wish You Could Hear This, where we explore great stories and simple proven steps to help you thrive in life, faith, and relationships.
In our research, we've heard hundreds of hope-filled strategies for marriage, parenting, leadership, and life that are grounded in science and consistent with biblical truth. And now you can hear them too.
I'm Shaunti Feldhahn.
And I'm Jeff Feldhahn.
Every one of us has a real need to build our relationship skills, and most of us don't even realize it. For example, in relationship advice, we often hear, you can't change the other person, you can only change yourself. But what does that mean? Strong people skills aren't just essential for our closest relationships. They shape the impact we all have on the world. And as you'll hear from our friend, Debra Fileta, all of us have some blind spots in that area. That's what we're going to talk about today on I Wish You Could Hear This.
Debra, let me just introduce you to our listeners. Debra Fileta is a licensed professional counselor, speaker, and founder of the Debra Fileta Counselors Network. She's a best-selling author of 9 books. Wow. Including Soul Care and Are You Really Okay? And her newest book, People Skills, which we'll be chatting with her today about. Debra is also the host of a popular podcast and nationally syndicated radio show, Talk to Me, where she facilitates authentic, on-air, counseling-style sessions with notable pastors and leaders. She and her husband, John, have become friends of ours. And Debra, I have to say, John hits all of my male insecurity buttons. You know, he is 6'4" or something like that.
He's tall.
He's an eye surgeon. He's good looking. All of those things that I was like sitting across the table from you guys and I'm going, this guy, I can't believe he's real. So we are, all that aside, we're delighted that you've decided to join us here on our podcast. So welcome.
It is so good to be here. And can I just say, John is your number one fan, Jeff. He loves you. So the feeling is mutual.
That's awesome. We had the funnest for our listeners to know what the heck we're talking about. We always, whenever Debra and I cross paths at events, we always try to get at least a little bit of time together, which is sometimes a bit difficult. But we had the biggest blessing a number of years ago. We were at the American Association of Christian Counselors big world conference. It's every 2 years down in this case, it was down in Orlando. I think that one was down in Orlando.
It was.
And so that was probably 5 years ago, right? And we said, let's go out to dinner. And finally we look up and the servers have like turned off the lights and they're trying to get us out. We were there for 4 hours.
I know.
And didn't realize it. Because you guys are very fun, and I hope our liesters will see some of the reason we love you guys.
Sadly, I'm not as fun without John, but I still think we'll have a good time and cover some really good content.
We are going to cover some really good content. For all of our listeners, Jeff and I really believe God has given Debra a lot of insight. And before we jump into the topic, because we're primarily going to be talking about your new book, People Skills, and some of these important crossovers that we talk about all the time, about the importance of these relationship skills. Before we dive into that, tell us, give our listeners a little backstory. What led you to get into Christian counseling? And ultimately, a number of years ago, you actually started a counseling network. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I have been so grateful for the opportunity to be a counselor, a licensed counselor. And it's funny because it wasn't always on my radar. I thought I would go into medicine someday. That was kind of the family thing. A lot of my family members went into medicine. And I remember kind of starting down that path and realizing I really loved interacting with the people, but I hated the medicine part. That wasn't my thing. And so that's when God really turned my heart toward the idea of counseling. And coming from a Middle Eastern background, I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, but coming from a Middle Eastern background, counseling isn't really a thing. So it was really going against the grain in my culture, but it just feels so like God to do that. And, now over 20 years into this, and the Lord has allowed me to establish a team of counselors to be able to write books about healthy relationships, mental and emotional health, to get to travel the country and even the world talking about deeper healing. And it's just such a privilege to be able to get to do what I do.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wow. And the world has benefited from your willingness to do that, Debra. Let me just say that first, full stop. So as a next step, though, with all the topics you could have picked for your latest book, tell us why you picked this one on people skills.
I think primarily because I was noticing the lack thereof in our world. I literally remember the day I texted my publisher and I was like, people need people skills these days. Like I must have had some sort of, I don't even remember the exact interaction, but I just remember observing something while I was out and about in the world and thinking, wow, we are really struggling in this generation to know how to interact and engage in a healthy way. And add to that, we live in such a tech-saturated world where you used to have to go to the grocery store and have an interaction with a live human being, or go to the library, and have an interaction with the librarian. Everything is on a screen. You order your groceries, you select, leave them at my door, so you don't even have to have a conversation with anybody. So even where we would have had these natural opportunities to develop our people skills, we no longer have those opportunities, and our whole world is online. Our social connections, the way that we learn to relate to people, the template we're learning is coming from social media rather than real life. And I think we take some of those bad lessons, those bad skills, those
sure.
unhelpful things, and we bring them to real life. And so I think first and foremost, it was just seeing the lack of people skills in our culture. But deeper than that, I think biblically speaking, we're called to convey God's love. We're called to show people the unblemished love of God. And instead of conveying God's love, because of our lack of skill, we're convoluting God's love. We're not conveying it in the right way. And I think of Paul in 1 Corinthians 9, where he says, I have learned to become all things to all people, so that by all means possible, some might be saved. And to me, that's the epitome of why we're doing this. Not to become more popular, to become more influential, to be a better communicator. I'm not saying all of those things won't be a byproduct of learning people skills, but the goal, my heart goal for this is so that we can convey God's love to a lost and desperate world, starting from our closest relationships to our most superficial relationships. So that's really my heart for it.
That's so good. Well, and it's true. I mean, just thinking out loud here, it is accurate that if we are going to be a winsome presence to the world, we have to be winsome, right?
Yes.
We have to be able to look like and share like and interact like Jesus would have us, rather than be nervous and, kind of avoiding hard conversations or whatever it is. One of the things, we were stunned when we saw this report from IFS. I don't know if you ever read the Institute for Family Studies stuff that comes out, but there was a major study about people who are dating. And one of the reasons that 70% of people who want to be dating, want to be in a serious relationship but aren't, is that they feel like they have this lack of confidence in just basic skills like this, like the ability to approach somebody they're interested in, or how do you handle it if somebody's not interested, or they, like you said, like we used to have to do this and have to be out there and have to have these awkward conversations starting when we were probably 11 years old, and now we're not anymore.
The fascinating thing to me on all of this is we're writers, all of us here, and we write about this stuff. There is not a lack of information out there for people to be reading about and hearing and trying to understand about, themselves or about others. That's out there. There's great sources for this, but I think of it like almost like baseball. You know, I can study baseball. I can read great biographies of people who have been successful baseball players. I can even know the physics and, of the spin rate of a pitch, that it's going to be a curveball, or the velocity, or all of those sorts of things. But until I actually get in a batter's box and try to hit it and swing a few times, all of it is just knowledge. And sometimes, that's what I think maybe at its core, folks just need to get in the batter's box and start taking some swings.
Well, can I jump onto that? Because Debra, one of the things that would actually be helpful, speaking of taking a few swings at people skills, so that people can, because we always try to be super practical, as I know you do too. Tell us, let's back up for a second. How do you define people skills? Like, give us just sort of a basic starting point. How do you define that?
I think the most simple way to think about people skills is how I show up in relationships, and my ability to honor my feelings, needs, perspective, while also honoring the feelings, needs, and perspectives of the person in front of me. There's got to be that balance to how we relate and interact with people. And it's interesting because most people that I've interacted with think they have people skills. And I think that's the dangerous part about this whole topic is we haven't even understood the depth of what people skills are. Oftentimes people will say, oh yeah, I have people skills. I love people. I'm good with people. I'm really extroverted. Or I can hold down a conversation with a wall. That doesn't mean you have good people skills. That means you're a talker, and you could be an extrovert, but you walk in a room and you're an attention vortex and you take all the attention on you. That is not good people skills. You can talk about things for 3 hours and make jokes and laugh and stay superficial in your interactions. That is not good people skills. People skills are much deeper than that. And as you look through the book, you'll notice there's 31 different skills that we zoom in on. And that's not even all of them. That's just the ones that I've found to be the most important as we're actually trying to make some practical, tangible steps in the right direction. But things like, can you repair a relationship after rupture? Most people, once a relationship is ruptured, they kind of walk away. They don't know what to do with it. Do you have empathy? Are you assertive, passive, or aggressive in your communication style? What's your body language and how does it come across? And what does it tell people with or without you realizing it? What's the tone of your voice, the posture of your body? I mean, there are so many subtleties and places where we really have to be emotionally insightful, emotionally aware in order to have good people skills. So it's a lot deeper than just being able to have a basic conversation with someone.
Wow. As I heard you say that about the people who think they have good people skills, but may not, it reminded me of the scene in Harry Met Sally. Okay, so for our listeners under 40 years old, Harry Met Sally was a very popular rom-com, one of the first. But there's this scene where Harry is saying, there's three types of women. There's the high maintenance women, and then there's the low maintenance women. And Sally said, well, what am I? And he said, you're the worst of all. You're a high maintenance woman who thinks she's low maintenance. and that's your people skills. That's the people who think they're really good at it, but they're not.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that you said, Debra, that I think I'd like to sort of press in on a little bit is that when we actually see what these, like you labeled 30, you said you had 31 that you've identified for the book, and there's more than that. When you start digging into them, and in my experience, at least with myself, it's actually digging into the examples and the practical sort of way it plays out that help us go, oh, like, oh, I'm not as good as I thought. So I'll give you an example from my life, but I would love to get a couple examples from you so that people can hear themselves, hopefully, in what you have to share. So for me, one of the aha moments was years ago when we did, you'll probably remember, we did the kindness challenge research, and we had that 30-day kindness challenge initiative. And I thought, one of the things you do every day for 30 days is you don't say anything negative or unkind about someone, either to them or about them to somebody else. And I thought, oh, I'll have to work on the other pieces, but I'm good at that. Like, I'm pretty positive. I'm not mean. I'm, whatever. And oh my word, once I actually started having to actually practice this, I realized I was actually unkind, or probably in your words, having very poor people skills every single day, because one of the patterns that we had identified was exasperation or irritation. And I didn't realize how often, if I'd be talking to the kids or talking to a colleague or something, there'd be this.
Or Jeff.
Can't forget Jeff.
Or Jeff. There would be this slight eye roll.
Yeah.
There would be this slight huff. There would be, again, body language, some of the little sort of habits that I had no idea. I was basically saying, you're an idiot. Like, I wouldn't ever want to say that to my sweet husband.
She wouldn't.
But that's kind of what I was signaling. So that to me was the big aha moment, like, oh my word. Can you give our listeners a couple of other examples so that they maybe see what you mean?
Yeah. I remember one time I was working with this couple in couples therapy, and the wife exuded this face that was just upset and angry and cold. There wasn't a smile on her face. It was just, a cold demeanor. And one of the topics of conversation was that her husband didn't know what she was feeling. And more likely than not, he would feel that she was upset about something. Like, hey, what's going on? Is there something wrong? And she would say, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. And it was causing some issues because it felt like repressed emotion. And so we're talking through this in our session, and she's like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. And he's like, well, then tell that to your face, because your face is exuding something completely different. And so a big part of that for her was actually having an awareness and an insight. Well, what is my resting face? And why is it that way? I think for some people, this stuff is rooted in things that are a little bit deeper. There's always a little bit deeper of, well, why do I exude a certain demeanor? And for her, it was a safety mechanism, a coping skill of just almost like the poker face of like, I don't feel safe to share what's going on inside of me. So I'm going to keep my emotions to myself. That was part of her childhood, growing up with an alcoholic father and just wanting to make sure she didn't rock the boat. But without realizing it, that became part of her physical demeanor.
Wow.
And so she doesn't have the insight. She just thinks there's nothing wrong. I'm fine. Why are you, acting like I'm upset? Why are you constantly? Because her face was communicating something that she wasn't even realizing. And so if you think about it, most of us aren't really aware of how we look. The only fraction of people that I have found to actually be aware are actors and performers, because they have to hold up a mirror and practice their parts in front of a mirror. But the average human being doesn't do that. We don't see ourselves when we're in the middle of an argument. We don't see ourselves when we're meeting someone for the first time. What do I look like? What is my physical body, my mannerisms, my facial expressions? What do they express? Are they open body language or closed body language? And I talk through the difference between those two in people skills, because things such as how you have your hands when you meet somebody. You show up to a conversation with your arms crossed. Maybe it just feels comfortable for you, but you don't realize that you're actually communicating,
Something.
stay away, self-protection. a distance. Whereas you meet somebody and you're using your hands to talk, and you're smiling and your eyes are wide open, and it presents differently. And so some of this stuff is cultural and how you were raised and how you grew up. Some of it is just skills that you have to learn along the way. People never taught you, or no one ever told you. I appreciate how blunt this husband was in the moment of like, tell that to your face, because in reality, who cares about us enough and loves us enough to offer that type of a mirror? Like, hey, here's how you're coming across, whether or not you realize it. And maybe this is something for you to consider. You know, we don't have people like that in our lives that we just invite them to give us feedback of how we're coming across. And it would do us well to have people like that. So my hope is that people's skills acts like a mirror to people who are reading it, of maybe opening their eyes to something that someone has never told them before, and something that they need to consider that they haven't considered before.
Wow. I mean, I'm thinking all the time that we're talking here, like, oh my gosh, what are those things that I convey that I am totally unaware of as I sit here with my arms crossed? Because it's comfortable for me, Debra.
Right.
But
Basic as that. Yeah, you're right. Eye contact, tone, body language, posture. And those are just the superficial things. I mean, we go even deeper with our empathy levels and
So
our
talk
ability.
about that. Yes. Talk
Well,
about the empathy thing. 'Cause
yeah,
that's huge.
it's huge because it is our ability to enter someone else's reality, to enter someone else's experience, to think about what might they be thinking and feeling in this moment, not just what am I thinking and feeling in this moment. And we have a tendency to get out of balance in either direction. I know some people, particularly people pleasers, there's a whole chapter on people pleasing, who think so much about what everybody else is thinking and feeling that they don't have any awareness of what they're thinking and feeling. But that's not healthy either. We need to have a balance where I'm aware of what I'm thinking and feeling and how I'm showing up, but I'm also aware of what you might be thinking, how you might be feeling, how this experience is affecting you. And I'm taking that seriously. I value that. And I think social media teaches us not to have empathy because we're given this opportunity to go online where the goal is to spotlight ourselves. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What did I eat for dinner? What do I need? What's my opinion on this hot topic? Without having empathy of everybody else and what they might be feeling and thinking and experiencing. What might their experience be in this situation and why? And I think empathy is such an important skill when we're interacting with people, to be able to understand their perspective and to value their perspective and to really make sure we're attuned and listening because it matters to us. And if we don't have empathy, we can't put ourselves in someone else's shoes. We're going to be lacking something in that interaction. We're going to be missing that connection and that intimacy that we could otherwise have. And I know this is a skill because I have a girl and 3 boys. And we're constantly working on the skill of empathy. Like, what might somebody else be thinking? When you're in middle school, boy or girl, the spotlight is on you all the time. All you're thinking about is how you feel, what you're thinking, what you need, what people think of you. And that's just not reality. Like, we have to be able to take that spotlight and practice putting it on the people around us and really trying to connect with their experience.
It's interesting. What this reminds me of, Jeff, is the Dale Carnegie
I
thing.
was just,
Were you thinking
I
that
knew you
too?
were going there.
Okay. So, Debra, I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but to sort of open my past to all of our listeners, when I grew up, as I was growing up, one of the things that was really challenging for me was I didn't have these people skills at all. So I really didn't have friends until really sort of late high school and then in college.
Yeah.
And it was the development of the skills that changed that. And now we have amazing friends, right, who we love, like you.
Yeah.
But the thing that really flipped a switch for me was, I think I was probably 12 years old. And my grandmother, we spent a lot of time with my grandmother and grandfather in Kansas City. And my grandmother handed me this old copy of Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
As a 12-year-old.
As a
Imagine
12-year-old.
getting
So,
Wow.
like, picture this, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's so funny. You think of it as a leadership book, a business book, whatever. But the premise, which was revolutionary for me, was a simple skill shift of, instead of trying to get people to like you by getting attention on you, which is what I was trying to do, instead put your attention on them and ask them questions about themselves. Just be interested in them.
Yeah.
And they will think that you're the greatest conversationalist on the planet.
Ever, which is actually, it's really true. And so that's an example of a simple shift, one little people skill shift that for me ended up unlocking a completely different life.
Yeah. Think about it, Shaunti. You literally took that into your career, asking people
Good
questions,
point.
investigating, researching. I mean, even just that connection is wild to me, because that is now what you do for a living.
That's a good point,
Which is
Debra. Yes,
unbelievable.
that is true. Well, the thing that I'm curious about is that, just to give some people hope, like I'm thinking of somebody listening to this who, let's just say it's somebody in their 20s, and I'm just going to give you an archetype, okay? Let's just pretend it's somebody in their 20s, or maybe it's a parent of somebody in their 20s. And this somebody in their 20s they would love to have more friends. They would love to be dating out there, you know, a member of the opposite sex, to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. But they hold themselves back out of anxiety. And this is common today because of what you said earlier. Like this generation didn't grow up practicing that enough to be super confident. So what would be an example of maybe one step, maybe two steps that would get that person started? Like it would just get some forward movement started with developing a few of those people skills that would help them stop pulling themselves back.
I think what you said is so important, because our behavior is a result of our belief system at the end of the day. So your belief system was, I don't have anything to offer, and I really hope people like me. I really hope people find me interesting, and really, you know, and so once you change that mindset to, I want to value other people, all of a sudden it changed the way that you showed up in a room. And one activity that I have people do in the book is I have them imagine they walk in a room with 99 other people. And there's people, and you know it's an experiment, but you don't know what the experiment is. So you walk in a room. How do you show up? What would you do?
First off, that's an introvert's nightmare. Let me just tell you from the introvert side of this relationship.
Yes.
Wow.
So some people might say, well, I want to hide and hope no one talks to me and stand by the wall and kind of cause the least amount of attention possible. Whereas others, like Shaunti, might go in and say, well, this is super awkward, so I'm just going to start asking questions and see if I can, get some conversation going. Whereas somebody else might be the life of the party, cracking jokes, making people laugh. And if we actually think about it, the reason we do what we do is rooted in the belief system that we carry as we show up in that room. If the belief system is, I have something to offer, then I'm going to go in there with a completely different set of behaviors than the belief system of, I hope people like me. I don't know if they will. Am I even adequate?
Wow.
Am I valuable?
Yes.
What do they think of me? How's my hair? Like depending on our belief system, it changes how we show up. And so for that person who is like, I don't know about dating, I feel insecure, I'm inadequate, I'm afraid of rejection, the first step is to really narrow down our belief systems that we're bringing into a relationship. And I feel that that has a big effect on social anxiety in general. I remember, even as a speaker, when I first started doing this and I would have to speak in front of rooms of thousands of people, and it's like, oh my goodness, I would feel anxious. And I would think, are they going to be bored? Am I entertaining enough? Is this like new information? Are they going to think this is silly? Is this engaging? And I'm thinking about all that I am receiving from them, all of the feedback that I will be getting from them. And the one shift that the Lord, I just actually remember I was putting something in the fridge, thinking about a speaking engagement I had coming up. And I remember God stopped me in my tracks and said, I want you to stop thinking about what you're receiving from them and go in there with the mindset of what you're giving them. I gave you a message. You're there to give the gift and walk away. And that changed everything for me. It truly took my anxiety from an 80% down to a 10%. The normal jitters, but I truly can get up there now and think I am here to offer something and leave it and walk away. And I think if we had that mindset as we walked into a room of 99 other people, God, what have you given me to give in this place? Wow. Do I really believe that I have something to give? Because even the introvert, Jeff, has something really valuable that those 99 other people don't have. And that valuable gift God has entrusted you to give. And so when I think about that, as it applies to a room of 99, as it applies to a platform speaking to 5,000 people, as it applies to my dating relationships, as it applies to my marriage, what am I here to offer? I'm not worried about all of the things and all the perceptions and if they'll reject me or not, or if they'll swipe left or swipe right. I am showing up with what I have to give. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 reminds us to encourage and edify one another. Like that's the goal. And if we could walk into a room with that mindset, I think it would drastically change the way that we do relationships and what we feel on the inside.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
true.
Profound. Thank you. Wow.
Yeah. I'm sitting here going, there are so many different ways that I could go with my next question, because we could be here for 2 hours, 3 hours talking about this.
Yeah, we really could be. There's so many different skills. I think one that would be important to mention, and it comes with a really practical example too.
Great.
Is your communication style. So we talk about passive communication style, aggressive, assertive, and passive aggressive. So the best way to think of it is if you were at a restaurant and your meal came out wrong, what would you do? It's so basic, such a basic question. I know, Shaunti's like elbowing Jeff, so I'm really curious.
Those who are watching on YouTube just saw me elbow Jeff because we have two very different philosophies about what you do at this point.
And I have a feeling it'll trace back to your communication styles in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't translate 100% because I might not care about the toppings on my burger as much as I care about how someone is treating me and talking about me, and but for the most part, you think of it this way. A passive person is really good at honoring the perspective of the person in front of them, their needs, their feelings, their desires, their experience, but not good at honoring their own needs, feelings, desires, and experiences. So a passive person might think, oh, the waitress is so busy. Look at this restaurant. It is wild in here. She is probably working so hard. I remember what it was like to be a waiter. And so you know what? It's not a big deal. I can handle this. We'll tweak. I'll eat it. I'll be fine. So that's more of a Jeff, right?
That would be Shaunti's impression. Yes.
That's my impression. It's not
That's her
always, but
impression.
yes, that is.
And Jeff,
more
you'll
Jeff.
have to kind of talk us through what you would really do. And so a passive person, someone who leans passive,
In their
is going
communication. Okay.
to focus more on the other person's needs, feelings, and experiences, and just say, you know what, I'm fine. I can handle this. Aggressive person is going to say, Shaunti has her hand up.
I'm raising my hand.
Confessions is going to be really focused on their experience. Like, this isn't what I ordered, and I would like you to change this immediately because this is not acceptable, and we've already been waiting 20 minutes, and so I'm super focused on my experience, my needs. But aggressive people could take it really far. I mean, I demand a refund, or I need 20% off, or whatever it is. It can just come across really intense because it's focusing on my perspective, feelings, and experiences, and not on the other perspective, needs, and experiences. Moving on to passive aggressive. This one's my favorite because it's the silliest one that people do so commonly. It's, I'm not going to say anything because it's not worth it. There's too much going on. But when the waitress comes, I'm going to be rude to her. And I'm going to be short, not make eye contact. I'm not even going to leave a tip. And when I go home, I'm leaving a Yelp review, a negative review, to let them know what a bad experience this was. So what's interesting about passive aggressive is they do not honor their feelings, their needs, and their experience. But they also do not honor the feelings, needs, and experience of the person in front of them. So nobody's being honored. Nobody's being benefited in the passive aggressive communication style. And of course, the ideal is the assertive communication style, to be able to honor what I need and my feelings, but also honor you. And that's as basic as, hey, I know you're working so hard and I really appreciate it. I noticed that this wasn't exactly as it should be. When you get a minute, I would really appreciate it if you could swap it out for the right meal. Something just so simple, respectful, kind, but I'm still honoring both sides of the equation. And I think we all have a tendency to lean towards one of the unhealthy ones. I am with you, Shaunti. I probably lean more aggressive and intense. I always say that I'm passionate, but it can come across as intense if I'm not careful. And so really taking inventory, having awareness, helps us begin to realize that I can and should honor the person in front of me, but I'm also allowed to and should honor my needs and experiences and feelings. And that small mindset shift in how we engage with people, whether it's about a burger or whether it's about a hurt, an offense, something that we're dealing with, whether it's in marriage or whether it's at a business meeting, I think it can really have a profound impact on how we engage with people.
That's really good. I really could keep talking to Debra for hours.
But she's got a busy life.
But she has a busy life, and she has another podcast coming up. And so,
can we schedule another 4-hour dinner soon?
I know.
Ooh,
we really do need
good.
to. I know.
Then we can all see what happens when our meal comes out wrong. It'll be like a social experiment, Shaunti.
There we go.
This is great.
I as much as I would love to keep going, because we have to wrap it up, I'm curious what her answer to our one question thing would be. You want to share that with her?
Sure. So, we always want to leave these things as practical for our listeners as possible, and with the full recognition that people forget stuff. So if there was one takeaway, one thing that you wanted our listeners to remember about this podcast or about people's skills, something that they can go, okay.
I will remember that one.
And it could be something that you already shared, or
Yeah.
it could be something that you hadn't gotten to yet. But what would that one thing be?
It would be the recipe of relationships. And we alluded to it at the start, but the reminder that we can spend all our lives trying to change the ingredients of the person in front of us. We can nag, we can critique, we can criticize, we can teach, we can, do all of these things. But if a relationship is like a recipe, I have a set of ingredients and you have a set of ingredients. And I can spend my whole life trying to change your ingredients, but I won't be able to do that. But what I can do is take ownership, responsibility, authority over my ingredients. I can swap out the bad ones. I can refine the good ones. And when I do that, it changes the entire recipe. It's not a powerless move or a helpless move or a victim mindset, because it literally changes the entire recipe. And so that's where I would say, let's zoom in there. Let's see what God wants to teach us with our actions, reactions, responses. Let's see what he wants to reveal in us that he wants to heal. And let's see how it impacts our relationships.
Wow. And as you so perfectly framed it at the beginning, so that we can share Jesus with a world that needs some hope.
Amen.
So can you share with our listeners how people can find you?
Yeah.
And some information about your counseling network.
Yeah. All the details are at debrafileta.com. And I hang out a lot on Instagram myself, so you can always connect with me there. You can learn about the podcast or our team of 20 counselors who are faith-forward, clinically trained at debrafileta.com. It's called the Debra Fileta Counselors Network. All the books and resources are there. So if you're interested in going deeper on your journey of healing, we'd love to help you.
I love that. Well, as we wrap up, Debra, I just want to say thanks for being willing to take the time to come on the show. I want to encourage everybody to check out People Skills, which for those of you who are watching on YouTube, it looks like this. And check out the Debra Fileta Counselors Network. You can see, we're going to put all those details in the show notes. But there are probably those of you who know someone who needs to hear what has been shared today. And so I'll encourage you, please share today's episode with them and tag us and tag Debra on all your social media channels.
And before we close,
Sure.
I just wanted to say publicly, thank you to Debra for being a friend. Sometimes you're out there in the world and some folks don't necessarily understand or care for what you have to say. And that's happened in all of our lives. Your support, your kindness, and some of those times has really been invaluable to both of us. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to I Wish You Could Hear This. Remember to subscribe to our podcast. And as always, forward today's audio or video link to a friend, counselor, or pastor who would be encouraged.